We are live here with episode 2 of the Financial Breakthrough Podcast. I've got Mr. Kyle O'Daniel here. I'm excited to introduce him. I am Jason Pride, CPA and financial freedom coach. My mission is just help my clients be able to spend more money, get out of debt, have the freedom and the life that they want. And this podcast and show is designed to do just that. I'm bringing on different people, and I'll be doing some teaching on just investment principles, how to better your business, grow your business, scale, sales. I mean, we're going to get into all of it over these next episodes. And Kyle here, I wanted to bring him in particularly. We're going to talk a lot about real estate today and real estate investing. And Kyle is pretty young. Are you 30 yet, Kyle? Are you?
I am a
okay.
Fresh 30 in 2 months.
Fresh 30 in 2 months. So we're going to go get into it. But Kyle just turned 30. He's a new dad of a couple months ago also. And he's in the Air Force. He's an engineer. Real estate investor. He's so successful and just turned 30. And I just wanted to pick his brain and just share what he's done to just be successful and be in the financial position that he's in at such a young age. So welcome, Kyle. I'm super excited to get to chat with you here and share your wisdom with people.
Well, thanks for having me. Happy to be here. I'm not sure if wisdom will be the word that's applicable to anything I have to say, but happy to be here.
No, so one of the things I wanted to start with talking to you about is in the real estate world, there's this concept called house hacking, and it is a little bit more advanced. It's a little more than just buying a rental property and renting it out, right? The concept of house hacking is basically where you buy a multifamily building and you live in one of the units. And as long as you buy a multifamily that's 4 units or less, you can use conventional home loans. You can use things like FHAs or even the 5% down home loans. And I know it in theory, right? I've owned rental properties. I know that, but I've never actually done the house hacking where I live in that unit. And Kyle has. And so I just wanted to have you kind of share your experience with house hacking, and in that, basically, how you picked the place that you did, what were some of the things that you looked at, and then what the benefits you saw from actually doing that house hack.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll start with a fun fact that whenever you told me this was one of the things you want to talk about, I started thinking about it, and I realized that next month, April, will be the first month that I have a out of my pocket housing expense since September of 2013.
Since September 2013.
Correct. Yes, and I think as we're going through.
Yeah. So, I forgot, because this started way before that. Because your first real estate deal you ever did. Let's pause on this house hack. The first real estate deal you ever did was a condo. Do I remember that right?
Correct, and that was also a house. So I've house hacked twice now, and we can kind of go through both of those if you want. But yeah, so September of 2013 was when I graduated in May and my lease was up in September, and moved home for a couple of years. But then a buddy of mine from high school and college, we kind of were getting the real estate itch. And after about a year of, kind of chatting all day, every day about the glorious life we were going to live when we were real estate moguls, we decided to pull the trigger. And we weren't originally planning on doing the whole house hack thing, but after about 6 months of back and forth on looking at places and going in the city and going through all sorts of abandoned places that probably were not structurally sound enough to be walking through. But we learned the you get what you pay for lesson going through a lot of cheap places.
And I imagine your budget wasn't too big coming right out of college, right?
That is correct. So we were looking for a discount place and not really knowing anything about the market or the different areas of the city. We were kind of dragging our agent all over the place. So he was patient enough with us, and we eventually kind of worked our area of interest farther out into the county. And kind of as this was developing, we had a handful of other friends that were in similar situations, graduated, moved home for a year or two, and we're looking to move out. So it kind of all came together for that first one, where we had 3 or 4 friends that had kind of given like verbal commitments, like, yeah, we'd all like to live together. If you guys find a place, obviously we're not going to commit to something without seeing it. But if you find a place in a certain area, we'd be interested. So we kind of at that point we kind of switched our focus to something that we could live in, and we could live in with a couple people, and try to make it work that way, and get started with one being on site, and two kind of having that free housing. So that worked out really well. The person I ended up buying it with, he ended up getting transferred out of town for work, so that opened up another room. So it was me, and then we ended up buying a 4-bedroom condo. So it was me and 3 of our friends, and I wouldn't say it was a cash cow by any means, but so the way we kind of had it structured is I lived there for free, and then we split any profit. So we each made a couple $100s a month. Nothing pushing us towards those fantasies of real estate mogulhood that we were talking about back here.
But hey, real estate is definitely the best get rich slow scheme, right? I mean, it doesn't sound like much to put a couple $100 in your pocket a month, maybe maybe $100 here, $200 there, right? But the fact that you're not paying rent, like you just said, you haven't paid rent or a housing expense in 8 years, and this is going to be your first payment just coming up pretty soon. But the amount of money that you've saved over that, I imagine, has to have let you get into these other real estate deals and live in the house that you live in now. And so, so if I understand right, you owned this building with a partner. He moved out, so there were 3 other rooms. So then you just lived in the same condo, 3 people. They each rented a bedroom, and what they paid covered your living expense. And he was able to put a couple $100 in his pocket. You were able to put a couple $100 in your pocket. That's
correct.
Awesome.
And so the other side of the coin is that you're able to, as far as putting money away to be able to do other deals, if you're living there, you kind of touched on this up front, but if you're going to live in the property, you're able to use different means of financing, right? So we were able to do an FHA loan, which was 3% down.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
3.5, something like that. Yep.
So decrease your upfront expenses dramatically. So that really helped out, especially getting started. So that lowers the bar of entry for getting into a property. And there's some requirements around how long you live there, and certain things that the FHA expects from you for getting a loan with those terms. But so not only are you able to have the free, you get your living covered, but then you're also able to have that lower bar of entry for your first property or any property after that. So we did that one. As we this one ended up getting a little weird, for a lack of a better word. As people kind of moved out, we had separate leases on each room. So at a certain point, we ended up having, even after I moved out, we kept going with that one room listing type setup, and it worked out really well. It was in a really good location that was central to a lot of different businesses, and we had a pretty good niche of people that were new to town for work, young male professionals that were looking for a place to live and kind of meet people because they were new to town and stuff. So that ended up being kind of another interesting, unique spin that we took on this one, was not renting it out as a unit, but renting out the rooms to individuals. And there's some risks that go along with that, as far as turnover and interpersonal conflicts from people knowing each other and whatnot. But that was kind of another unique spin that we took on this one, and it worked out. We didn't do it for a terribly long time. We ended up, I guess we can I can skip to this now, but I took a year with the Air Force and went over to Germany in the middle of 2019, and we sold this property, and we actually closed on the sale the day before I went there. So we did that for
good timing.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of how that one wrapped up. Was we house hacked it for 2 years, rented it for a year, and then sold it to one of the tenants, actually.
So how, I know that, like you said, it is a little bit more difficult to rent out a house by room. It's certainly more difficult, but it's also more lucrative, right? It's almost like the difference between Airbnb being a place and doing annual
Yeah, that's a great
leases
comparison.
where you can certainly get higher return, but it's more work, right? And you're also dealing with the conflict. So can you give me some dollar numbers, like just so people can get an idea of the difference between renting things out per room versus renting it out in general? So this is a 4-bedroom condo. It was in the Creve Coeur area of St. Louis, if I remember right. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yep.
So what do you think the whole place together probably would have rented for if someone had came in as one annual tenant for the whole year?
I think if we had upgraded it a little bit, put some new flooring down, new paint, and kind of made it, your standard aesthetic updates, we probably maybe could have pushed it to $1,400 a month.
Okay.
Maybe, but probably closer in the $1,250, $1,300.
Okay.
And we were renting the individual rooms anywhere from $450 to $550. So average 500. It was probably, if we're stretching it at 1,400 for just the family, we were closer to 2,000 a month for renting the individual rooms. And as far as the inconvenience goes, I was living there for most of that, right? So that that inconvenience of having to do showings more often because we were only doing 6-month leases instead of a year. That headache wasn't as much as it would be if it was something across town or whatnot. But so the dollar difference is definitely dramatic. And the Airbnb, that's an interesting comparison because we did that at our second property, and the margins there were actually the difference between the normal rental and the Airbnb was even more dramatic in that case. So
even more so than renting it out room by room, the return was even better than that.
Yeah, for the place that we did Airbnb, we didn't Airbnb this condo, but the multifamily we Airbnb'd one of those units, and that was almost a factor of 2. I think we could have rented it for
wow.
800 or 900, and we were getting 1,600 to 1,800 from Airbnb. And that was that area was great. It had a lot of appeal. It was close to downtown for concerts and baseball games and all that good stuff. But I'll transition into that one, I guess, while we're talking about it. So the second property after the condo was a multifamily, which my wife and I actually purchased. And the thought with that, we had this whole plan that we were going to do with this one, and that ended up not being how things played out. But it ended up working out in its own way. So it was a 4-family that was converted into a 3-family. So it was one kind of townhouse type unit on one side that was 2 stories, and then 2 1-bed, 1-baths, kind of your traditional shotgun style on the other side. So we bought that with the idea that the 2 of us would live in one of the smaller units, and then once we had a kid or 2, we would move into the big unit, and we'd house hack this place for a decade or something.
Yeah.
We quickly decided we wouldn't actually want to do that. We went there and realized we'd be driving our tenants nuts.
I feel there's got to be a difference between house hacking when you're just a single guy, right? And then once you're actually married and wanting to start your life, and I can get that. I could certainly get that.
Yeah, it's not for everyone, that's for sure. And but it worked out. It worked out on this one. We didn't end up going with that plan, but we did. We had it for a couple of years. We still own it currently, but when we were there, we kind of upgraded our unit because we moved into the one that was the least updated, and we opened up the kitchen, redid the kitchen. It was a pretty small place, so there's really only so much you could do with it. And then the big unit, there was kind of a unique layout upstairs where we actually converted a closet into a hallway. I'm trying to think of a good way to make that visual connect, and it's probably not going to work. But we were able to add a 4th bedroom basically by putting a hallway in between the bedrooms instead of what was previously just a walk-through living space or library was able to be classified as a bedroom at that point. So it was then a 4-bed, 3-bath. But the scale of the multifamily really helped there, and on that one, it was pretty similar on the numbers. We were living there, and all of our expenses were covered, and we were probably clearing $400 to $500 a month.
Wow.
On that. So again, like you said,
so let me pause there. So you took the smallest unit, well, not the smallest, but the least updated. You upgraded it so you guys were a little bit more comfortable. You had a more spacious kitchen. You opened things up so it wasn't as old feeling. So you had a nice unit after renovating it. And then you rented out the big half to the other person because half of it was all one unit that they
Correct.
turned into one. And then the bottom floor, you rented out, if I remember right. So those two were not only covering all the utilities, but also the mortgage payment. Plus you were getting $400 a month into your pocket.
Correct.
Awesome. All right. That seems like
Yeah,
a
pretty
good,
cool.
good
And
move.
so
Okay.
that one also, since we were living there, we were able to do the FHA financing on that one. I think you're able to do that every 2 years. If you haven't used it in 2 years, you're able to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So we had bought the condo 3 years prior, so we were able to use another FHA loan. And yeah, so we actually in the process of selling that one currently, but it's
so I'm kind of with you. I know a lot of people that actually, like Dave Ramsey's approach is to minimize as much debt as you possibly can, and I'm a fan of that in pretty much every area except for what we refer to as good debt, or when you're buying assets that actually generate cash flow or benefit for you. And so, I noticed that you said you've been using FHA loans 3.5% down, and there's also a lot of people that say no, you should never buy a house unless you have 20% to put into it and to get the equity. Tell me about your thought process of why you sway towards leveraging more debt when buying these properties.
I think we touched on the first one. It was almost out of necessity, right? It was well, we don't have much money, and we'd like to buy some real estate, so that one kind of forced our hand there. But it is there's the opportunity of what else you could be doing with your money, right? And if you aren't getting bad debt, if it's not, I'm not going to call student loans bad debt because education is everything, right?
We'll say like consumer debt. So we'll say
Sure.
cars, furniture, credit card debt, those kind of things.
Yeah, that's a better. We'll leave student loans for a different discussion. But it's producing income, right? So it's having that debt, and it's a set. This is going to be a bad, not clean description.
What I heard you say earlier was basically about how what you can also do with that money. And my thought process, the way I kind of think through it, and you might have a different perspective of why you do it, but basically, if you can borrow money at 4% and you can get a return like Kyle was doing at 20, 30, 40, 50% your money in real estate. 50% is pretty wild, but let's just say for ease, 10%, you can get a pretty standard 10% return on your money somewhere else. If you can invest that money at a better rate of return than what the actual cost of the interest is, I mean, that's why I view it as good debt. And whenever I enter a real estate deal, I want to leverage that as much as possible and put as much of it towards debt as I can, because I want to be able to invest the rest of that money at a higher rate than what the interest is accruing.
Yeah, and I kind of skipped over that mentally because that was almost a no-brainer, and I was skipping to the benefit of the debt being set, right? So if you own this property and it's $100,000 and your rents can go up, your revenue from the property can go up. If it's not your full-time job and you have a full-time job, hopefully you're at least getting inflationary based raises there, so your income's going up, but your debt service never goes up. Your interest rate is set unless you refinance to lower it, and your principal is set from the original amount. So in the long term, your liability is a set stable amount, and your revenue is a adjustable, ideally upwards amount. So it's a pretty unique situation where you can leverage those two things off of each other, of having the as you mentioned, borrowing at a lower interest rate than you're able to get the return at. So you have that benefit there, and then also in the long term of having the set liability, playing that off of the ability to increase the revenue and your other potential increased revenue streams.
Yeah, and also on that same side of leveraging as much debt as you can is that the appreciation that happens in that property is also fully to you. So let's say you pay 10% down for the property, the bank really owns 90% of it, right? Let's say the thing goes up in value by 50 grand. When you sell that property, the bank doesn't get 90% of that 50 grand increase. You get all of it. And so not only are you getting the difference in interest, but yeah, you're able to leverage the revenue going up with that fixed liability payment, but you get the full appreciation of a property that the bank doesn't get a cut of. Like there's no other investment vehicle where if someone's paying for 90% of it, they don't get to take part of the right, the pie at the end.
Even in real estate or really any business, if you have investors, they're going to expect some portion of that. But in going traditional with traditional financing, the bank is your lender and they're your investor, and that's how they view it. They view it as how good of an investment are you as someone that they're giving their money to. Except it's the unique situation where they're not expecting any additional upside besides that agreed on interest rate. And it really is. It's a quadruple-edged sword. I don't know if any of those are made yet, but it's a pretty effective weapon in the building wealth battle. So,
and one of the things that I've noticed from our conversation here is that you're willing to essentially make, I don't know if the sacrifice is the right word, but you're willing to make the sacrifice today, knowing that the benefit's going to come in the future. Like living below your means now, so that way you can have the life that you want in the future. And I remember when we were first talking about when we were connecting about real estate and stuff like that, I was talking with Kyle about basically his financial situation and what his plans were and his strategy of how he was going to scale up. And I remember correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I remember one of the things you told me was that you basically ate 2 McChickens for lunch every day because you had a $2 a day budget or allowance that you gave yourself for lunch. And so it was either like 2 tacos at Taco Bell or 2 things off the dollar menu at McDonald's. Am I remembering that right?
I was going to jump in and say, you got to give me some credit for diversity. It was not
just McChickens every single day.
It was in about 6-month increments. It was those items. So I would do
McChickens for 6 months. Taco Bell for 6 months.
Yeah, I am not a foodie by any means, so that helps. But I definitely, so I don't want to say pride myself. It's to some people it's probably more embarrassing than something to be proud of. But I've always been a dollar menu or dollar menu eater, a Bud Light drinker, and a same pair of sweatpants for a decade wearer. So I think that's definitely, and I don't know if it's just personal priorities or whatnot. It's never been a huge internal struggle of I need to spend less money, but there definitely have been perks to my default being to spend less money, and seeing my coworkers go out to lunch and come back every day with a sub from this craft sub place down the street, and not that they're not financially stable or shouldn't be doing that, but it makes me feel good about myself. Whatever I'm sitting there eating my $2 piece together rice and edamame and veggie burger. That's my current one. I have moved.
Your current 6-month stretch is rice and veggie burger.
I now do my grocery shopping and compile at work. I do not. I've gotten away from the fast food for health reasons, but I would say my food expense is definitely one of my biggest things that I think makes me a little more frugal than others, and it definitely has expedited my student debt, which when I came out of college, I mean, I had right at 6 figures in student loans, and kind of the combination of being able to do this house hacking and save that housing expense combined with really any form of frugality that I can get my hands on, that really is necessary at times, right? And like you said, to be able to make that sacrifice, and for some people it's harder than others, right? Like I said, kind of my default is kind of those things anyway. But that doesn't mean that it's not hard at times and that it wouldn't be more enjoyable to go get a better meal at lunch or something. But there's benefit to those, and I think even in the short term, in the few years since I'm going to call it a few years for my own dignity's sake, since I graduated college, but it's reaped rewards in even the short term, but definitely in the long term, getting yourself out of that debt hole and really doing whatever you have to make that happen.
Yeah, I am definitely a foodie, and one of my favorite uses of money is going out to a nice dinner. So I respect your ability to be disciplined with that, and I practice differently. And hey, you've been able to scale really quickly off that and pay down student debt, and that's certainly something that I respect, to have that discipline and that vision for the future, to know that, when you do want to, live in abundance, you do. And I've seen you do that, and you enjoy things, and you also know that you don't need to waste money. And that's a really strong character to have. So I want to kind of move on to, I know you mentioned a little bit earlier that you actually took a year abroad where you lived in Germany for a year, and that was with the Air Force. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you went over to Germany, and I kind of want to hear about that and the benefit you see and why you chose into the Air Force. But then also, if you could share a little bit about how you actually managed these properties while you were gone, because the biggest complaint I get from people when I tell them, like, look, you got to get into real estate, I'm telling you, it's worth it, you got to get in, is, well, I don't want to be getting calls to go fix toilets at midnight. Or I don't want to be dealing with yada yada. I don't know how to fix a sink, right? And me, I'm the least handy person there is. I don't know how to do any of that stuff. And
you were always vying for number one when it comes to least handy.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about, like, the decision to join the Air Force in the first place, because you're already you're an engineer. You had a good corporate job engineering, but branching out into the military, and then how you managed to keep all your moving pieces together while living overseas for a whole year.
Yeah, I'll jump back. Well, I want to, I guess, for anyone listening that's kind of like, wait, he said he hasn't made a payment in 8 years, but it sounds like there were some circumstances around it that made that pretty easier than he made it sound. The Air Force was definitely one of them, right? A year in Germany where the Air Force was covering my housing. So I can't take full credit for that one.
For that 1 year. And hey, you still didn't have a payment. So
exactly.
It doesn't matter what method you did to not have a payment. It's a valid method. And there are benefits to joining the military, and that's certainly one.
And so benefits of joining the military, there were definitely a lot of those. And I think what kind of fueled my decision for that was that I did have a stable job that I enjoyed. And I could, as I was kind of spending the first year or two there, I realized that I could see myself doing that as a career and being there for the duration of my career if it played out that way. And then I kind of was taking the next step of, well, am I okay with that? Do I want that to be, what I've done with my life and with my professional career, doing this one thing, this one company, and even if I'm comfortable with that being my income and working with those people for that long and all that, am I okay with that being my impact and my the full breadth of kind of what I've done? And I determined that no, I really wasn't, and that I would at some point either want to expand and do something different as far as my career, or I would need to add something on top of the current career that I had. And kind of knowing my personality, and that it would not be surprising if I went the route of staying, with the same career, and just with always a plan of adding something on, and then all of a sudden being 60 and being like, I forgot to add something on. So this was really a great way to maintain the lifestyle that I had, and maintain the career that I had, and add that additional personal kind of impact vehicle on top of that, without having to sever ties with my company, or having to move locations or go get transferred somewhere for work or something.
So you're able to do both, get that satisfaction. That's because there's so many people who say like, look, I want more out of life, but I'm too scared to leave my job. I want to have a bigger impact, but I'm too scared to give up my career. What would I do without that salary? And I think that's awesome that you were able to find a win-win, get that personal satisfaction, get that feel that passion for doing something you enjoyed, and that you're helping greater than beyond, and you're still thinking about your family. You're still going to work. You're still doing those things. You can have both.
Yeah, the National Guard is really a great vehicle for knocking both of those things out. And I've been doing it for 6+ years now, and have really.
And are you National Guard or are you Air Force?
The Air National Guard.
Air National Guard. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I know I'm sure I speak for the other people watching this, but we certainly appreciate your decision to do that and your service, man. And I also remember on that. I also remember, I don't know if it was your wife shared with me how when you first went to boot camp or to training camp that you kept getting in trouble because you couldn't keep a straight face and you're getting yelled at and just kept laughing. Is that what happened?
I wouldn't say I kept getting in trouble, but there definitely was an incident on the first day where I was in an office with one of the drill sergeants, and he had picked 5 of us to run entry and exit control of the dorm, and he seemed like he'd kind of let his guard down, and he was being casual, and I kind of reacted accordingly, and apparently that you weren't supposed to do that, and he turned and kind of snapped at me, and I guess I had a dumb grin on my face, and it didn't go anywhere. So he was like, "Something funny, son?" And I was like, I don't know. I was definitely taken off guard because he had made me, he had gotten me comfortable, and then he sprung his trap on me. But
it's a trap.
I learned that lesson pretty quick. So
so
the military has definitely been good. And then so we got assigned over to Germany for a year, and we were definitely concerned about owning the properties and how we were going to manage those, and we solved the condo by selling it. That's the easiest way to manage something, is to not own it.
Just sell it. Take your day.
We closed on that the day before we left, actually, so that timing was perfect, if you want to call it that. And then the other ones, it was really just kind of having a team in place to handle things in emergency, but we really didn't need to do that. And there's 2 things that I've kind of say I've learned. I don't know, that sounds a little dramatic, but like I've noticed over the last 5 years of owning things, property to be specific, not just owning things. There's really like 2 things that I expected to be more difficult that have been pretty easy, and one is the management and the lack of the 2 a.m. phone calls to unclog a toilet.
They don't really exist.
Because when was the last time at 2 a.m. you were clogging toilets?
So I did get a call at well, it was actually a series of inebriated texts from a tenant that they were locked out at 12:30 a.m. That's the latest I've ever seen a text, and I did happen to see it actually.
They were actually trying to get into the neighbor's building.
No, they were trying to get in there. They just lost their keys. But like Kyle said, as long as you have a system in place, there's not a huge concern. Because I basically have a lockbox for each tenant in the basement, and all I did was say, okay, great, your lockbox code is this. Return the key by tomorrow morning. After their first one, they have a lockout fee, and so even things like that, it's so easy to put a system in place to protect yourself from that. So
yeah, the amount of things that the only urgent things have been AC going out in the middle of the summer,
or furnace in the winter. Yeah,
furnace in the winter, and the furnace is generally just the pilot light has gone out. Everything has been either very minor and not urgent.
And there's a couple things that play into that, right? It's about building selection, right? I mean, if you're going to buy a really old building, you buy it knowing that you're going to replace some things, or you're going to have more maintenance issues. But when you go in and you buy a decent building, you find a good deal, you get stuff that's got some more recent especially HVAC, because that's the thing that's going to cause the most issues, is more up to date. You're not going to have those problems. And even when you do, that's not something that you need to go down and fix, right? So I have someone, like for instance, in the winter, I did have a furnace go out at one of mine, and it was cold, and so I said, go to Home Depot or wherever, buy 2 space heaters. I'll give you a rent credit for it, right? Or you can return them to me later, and I'll just keep them for future use. And then you call the HVAC company, and they go do everything. I live 45 minutes from that property and never had to go down there once. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's I've always been surprised by that. It seems like people kind of use that as an excuse to like not pull the trigger, and that's definitely one that I've found to be an old wives' tale, I guess, is that has not happened much. And granted, like you said, selection of the property helps with that, but also I think selection of tenants plays into that. Where I'm gonna chalk it up to luck of the draw.
Well, what's your screening parameters for tenants? So when you screen them, what are the different minimum thresholds that they have to meet? And for people out there listening who have never been in real estate, this is something you 100% need, 100% need to do, is you need to screen your tenants. And the stricter you are, the longer it might take to find someone, but the less problems you're going to have. So what do you use as your screening parameters when you're putting a new tenant in?
Yeah, so there's generally like a handful of financial parameters, and then there's I guess you can call them personal parameters maybe, but the financial ones would be credit score, and I think we usually require 600 or more. A income, like a rent income multiplier, and usually I think 2.5, I think is what we go with. It's been a while since we've had to fill a vacancy, which is a good thing, but I think 2.5 or 3 times of rent is what we would require for income. And then on the personal side, there'd be obviously a clean rental record, so no evictions, no issues with previous rentals. And then we require 2 recommendations or referrals, and we'd call those. Usually it's previous landlords. We'd call them and just check in and make sure that they're a good person, right? That they're not someone that was breaking the terms of the lease regularly and causing issues for the landlord or other tenants. But that's a lot of what it is. And not everyone can probably do this, but since we lived in one of them and we're in the area we lived in the area of our rentals, we've been able to do all the showings and generally meet all the tenants when they're going through. And I've noticed that's just talking to people. It's crazy what people will tell you and how much they'll admit about different habits they have or previous history they have just from talking to
kind of like the officer letting his guard down, getting casual, and then you can open up to him, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I do too, is I'll when I'm showing units is try to be as casual as I can be with that person to get them to be their true self. If they think of me as a friend and not as a landlord who's going to be, then I see who they really are, and they might share more than what they would if it felt like an interview.
Yeah, not that you're tricking them into anything. It's just
I'm just being me, and I'm just trying to make a friend on my end.
Yeah, and so that's kind of along the lines of the second thing that I've noticed is that there's not really a lack of supply of good tenants, and I was worried about that. And it's always been like, oh, are we going to be able to fill this? And what happens when you have 6 months vacancy? We've run into that as much as we have the emergency maintenance calls, right? I think we on our single family, we have had in 4 years, we've had 2 weeks of vacancy. Man. And that's with 4 different tenants. So like we rotated through people, but it was just like back to back, move out, move in 2 days later. And then on the multifamily, we've had similar, like 2 months of vacancy combined between the 3 units over 4 years. So
and one of the other reasons, like you can't do that quick turnover when you have bad tenants in there. That's another benefit of screening so thoroughly, like Kyle does, is that when you have a good tenant in there, they're not going to destroy the place, right? They're going to take care of it, and you don't need to do a month of maintenance between people. You can, if they're out, the person before cleaned, they followed that, they took care of everything, they might have repainted, they did all their whole checklist, and it's good to go without even having to do anything sometimes.
Yeah, it's great. There's been a couple times where we're going in, we're talking with them as they're about to leave, and the place is empty, and we're doing the final walkthrough, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we paid to have a cleaning crew come through," and we're like, "Oh man, like you didn't have to do that. We were going to do that. We had this checklist of things that we wanted you to do, and that was all you had to do, but you paid to have a cleaning crew come through, so thank you. We're still going to have our crew come through and whatnot, but that screening definitely plays a big role into the success of everything. It cuts down on the maintenance requests, because if they're understanding and they're just have that kind of temperament where everything isn't a huge ordeal, and they don't expect you to be down there at 2 a.m. fixing a minor problem. You don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about, like you said, the turnover issues, and then you don't have to worry about missed payments. And one benefit that we've had is that we have started running it. I guess from the beginning, we ran everything through a management portal, so everything was online. Leases were online, payments were online, so they're able to set up automatic payments, and there's no, "Oh yeah, I'll drop it by tomorrow," or "It's in the mail," or "Oh, it must have gotten lost and you sure you didn't see it in your mailbox?" Haven't had any of that, because it's all automatic payments. Everything just goes right through, and on the first, if anything, it's it's a situation like you said where you're going to apply a $50 credit or something. We had a tenant whose cat got lost, and we had to we lowered their pet fee for the rest of them,
because now they don't have a pet.
I could have found a better example than a morbid loss. But, "Hey, our cat hasn't been around for a few months. Can you get rid of that part of the pet fee?" We're like, "Yeah, sure." So we lowered it, but they forgot to lower their automatic payment, so we got overpaid. That's the only collection issue that we've had, is having to correct for overpayments from not adjusting auto pay. But yeah, I think those two, we'll call them myths, have kind of been stuck out the most to me in the brief time that we've owned a few properties, or that the maintenance issue, the maintenance load is really not a big deal, and it's especially not a big deal if you are outsourcing that to contractors and you have a team in place to handle things. And it's so little of a burden that we were able to do it from Germany.
Now, did you have to flip tenants at all when you were in Germany? Did you have anyone move out, move in, where you needed to have someone show the place, or did you kind of luck out with the timing of the leases and stuff?
We definitely lucked out. We had one that was in transition, like right when we got back. They were moving out like the week we got back, so we had somebody do a couple showings before. But we actually ended up like 2 days after we got back, we did a showing, and that was.
But you had it covered. Like if it hadn't have,
Right.
If you haven't been back in time, your systems were in place, and you had someone to show it if you.
Yeah, and I think everyone has someone that they could have do that, whether it's another person in real estate, or whether it's your agent. I'm sure most people's agents would probably be open to helping out with stuff like that, or if it has to come down to it, you get a management company for whatever period of time that you have to be gone. There's definitely flexibility for that, but for small scale single family, multifamily, the management load is very minimal. And then kind of going back to the condo and running off of that second myth that I'd say is false with finding good tenants. I was shocked at how many people fit. We had a very tight niche of people that we were looking for, right? It was like 23 to 29 male, young professional that worked within like 5 miles of this condo. And we filled it with like 10 different people over a 2-year period, and like never had a vacancy. That's probably not true. We probably had a few weeks of vacancy here and there, but never had an issue of like lack of interest or just crickets with posting with listings or anything. So there are a lot of people out there, and they're all different, and the numbers are definitely in your favor when it comes to trying to fill a property, especially if you have some form of unique amenity, I think. And with the 3 properties that we've had the single family that has a double lot in the city that's fenced in, so it is highly attractive to people with pets. We have that multifamily that is across from the Botanical Gardens, so that location is really prime, and there's that location would be really hard to beat. And then the condo was in a nice area. It was quiet, but it had the low rent of renting out just the room, with that kind of niche tenant base. So I think if you have one of those, any unique amenity or any specific draw that there's people out there that'll be looking for it,
and you can charge a premium on it. Yeah, certainly. So the next thing I want to ask you about, Kyle, what's next for you? So you're back from Germany. I believe you and I know we kind of skipped over this even, but while you were in Germany, you got a house, had your dad help you get a house, and it's rehabbed. You're living in a home now. And what's next for your real estate endeavors? What's your plan going forward?
Yeah, so whenever we were in Germany, we kind of decided we didn't want to move back into the multifamily because we actually got pregnant over in Germany with our child now, and so we decided we wanted to buy a primary residence and make the leap to have a housing payment that came out of our pocket. But yeah, so we bought a house. It's in a really nice area, and it might be the smallest house in our zip code, but it was
smallest house on the nicest street. That's the best way to add value.
Yeah, we bought that sight unseen, with severe input from family and our agent. And
so you bought it while you were in Germany. You didn't even see the place. You just trusted your agent. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So one benefit, there was like a blueprint or like a layout of the house in the photos, which I think should be a requirement of all listings, because there is nothing worse than clicking through pictures and being like, is that bathroom? Is that a master bath? Or is that a kitchen? Or where is that? So that really helped. We were able to see that, okay, well, we want to remove these two walls and turn this into a dining room and open up the kitchen here. And that really helped a lot with that. So the people we had here helping us with it, and then really that one picture kind of made us pull the trigger. And we finished the basement up here. Put a garage in the back, opened up the whole first floor. We're really happy with how it's turned out, and really grateful to the people that helped out whenever we were gone. But so we're living here now with the market being how it is. We thought it would be a good opportunity to sell the two rentals that we still have. So we're currently under contract on the multifamily, and we'll be listing the single family here in the next couple of weeks. And the intent with those is we're having them set up to do a 1031 exchange with them. We're setting it up hoping that we can make that work, understanding kind of how the market is right now. Our two options are be patient and wait for a better deal.
And I'm going to pause you super quick, Kyle. So on a 1031 exchange, and this is probably, we're not going to get into a 1031 exchange in too much detail on this as we're getting close to time. It is kind of a complex thing, but for those listening to know, basically in a nutshell, a 1031 exchange it allows you to not pay tax on the gain when you sell something by essentially rolling that that sale into a bigger property. So when people say I'm going to 1031 something, they're really meaning they're upgrading to a bigger or a more expensive building. And at that same time, they don't have to pay any capital gains tax on that. So the issue is you only have a very limited time to do that. And so I believe that's what you were saying about like we're going to try to 1031 it, and hopefully you're able to get a deal in place to move those funds into to do that tax deferral.
In order to execute that, you do have to have it set up front. So the proceeds from any sale have to go into a third party account managed by basically an escrow agent. And then when you locate the replacement property and you purchase it, the funds get transferred from that account to the sale. So you
never even have
them to your account. So it does have to be set up beforehand. So that's kind of what we're doing now is we're setting up the properties through the contract to have the funds put into an escrow account. And then if we're able to find a property that meets what we're looking for as far as returns and cash flow and all that, then we'll be able to do that. And if we don't, and we aren't able to meet the timelines required for the 1031, then we'll take it out of the escrow. We'll pay the capital gains and be patient and wait for the right deal to show up. But we wanted to set ourselves up for the opportunity to take advantage of that capital gains tax deferment. And so we think it really isn't. It's pretty cheap to set up. So we're pretty confident that even if we aren't able to find it,
worth the risk.
We'll cut our losses and
a few $100 in legal fees to save 15% capital gains on.
Exactly. So set ourselves up for success there, but know that we need to make sure we're being patient enough to not just jump on a bad deal because we're set up for the 1031. So that's kind of what we have to focus on now is making sure that we don't get emotional about it and be like, well, we're 1031ing this, we have to do it.
That is a boat where you want to be on the seller side of that situation, right? When someone has 1031 money that they want to use, there's almost a premium on that because of their tax savings, and so people that do have 1031 money tend to pay a little bit more, and so that's good to know ahead of time. Hey, look, we're going to have this discipline. These are our parameters, and we follow them. Since it'll be tempting sometimes to pay more than you really should, where it makes that capital gain savings not worth it anymore.
Yep.
Yeah. Great. Well, thanks for this awesome content, Kyle. I'm so excited for this and to share this episode with everybody. Before we go, what advice, if any, would you give to somebody who maybe has never been in real estate before? They might they're nervous. They might think that they're not ready. They need to know more. What would you tell someone who's never ever even thought of investing in real estate?
Yeah, I think I was hoping your shirt was a Nike shirt and the Just Do It was going to be on there, but Just Be is just as good, I guess. I think that's really applicable. You need to just jump in, and not that you should wing it or you shouldn't know what you're doing, but through the process is kind of set up to have people intrinsically guide you through it, right? You have a real estate agent to help you navigate the market and areas and rents, and you have a mortgage broker to show your options and make sure you're doing things legally and financially beneficial to yourself. And then if you're doing any remodeling or anything, you have contractors, and you have all those resources that are there to help you through the specifics of it. And sure, you may not understand all of it 100%, but you're really never going to get to that point. And if you're expecting to get to that point before you do anything, you're going to continually be doing research and looking for the perfect situation that you understand completely. And you really, I think in my experience, you need to jump in, you need to do it. And then you'll slowly get comfortable, and you'll lean on those people less as you move forward. So those first deals, you'll be bugging your agent a ton.
100%.
And your contractor is going to be like, I do not want to work with this guy ever again. For your second deal and your third deal, you'll lean on those people less. You'll still have them there to fall back on, but as you're going, you can kind of wean off and run a little bit more on your own. But I think that's my biggest takeaway is that you got to do something. And if you don't do something, you're always going to have done nothing. But know that those people are there, and that those people are built into the system, right? You don't even have to go find them. You don't have to.
They're just going to show up to help you.
Yeah. And in order to do it, you have to have those people. So there's no way to do it on your own. So leaning on those people that are there naturally in the purchase process, I think is really important.
Yeah. Nice. Well, Kyle, if anyone viewing wants to reach out to you or connect with you, where and how can they do that?
They can find me on Facebook. If they type in my name, I will be one of the Kyle O'Daniels that pops up on Facebook. I do not have
Awesome.
I don't have a website. You can probably get a hold of us through my wife's website. She's an in-home personal trainer at findthecorefitness.com. You can find us there. Also, if you're looking for some fitness assistance. But yeah, I mean, I love talking real estate. So if anybody even is just want to talk about house hacking or finding different streams of income from Uber or Airbnb, I've done all that stuff. Loved all of it. Love talking finance and real estate. So even though it is informal through Facebook, feel free to reach out.
Nice. Well, thank you, Kyle. And this was the Financial Breakthrough show and podcast, where the whole purpose of this show is to just educate in different investments and different ways to grow your business. And I love talking real estate. So thank you, Kyle. And one last plug: we are not giving any investment advice on here. Do not go buy something, go belly up, and then try and sue either me or Kyle. So we thank you in advance for understanding that we're not giving investment advice on here. But thank you so much, Kyle, and I look forward to chatting with you again in the future.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Take care.